Have you ever noticed that the quietest ones are often the most dangerous? And in Alice in Borderland proves exactly that. While everyone moves in a rush, she observes, calculates, and acts with precision that leaves any opponent speechless. It seems counterintuitive, doesn't it? How can someone apparently calm and distant be the most strategic and impactful piece in the game? Today, you will discover how deep traumas and silent choices transform into a player who manipulates not only the game but also the people around her. But what makes her so unique goes beyond physical survival. It is the combination of old wounds, emotional intelligence, and almost surgical decision-making that makes her practically unbeatable. You will understand how rejection, fear, and distrust, when properly channeled, can become powerful weapons, and how that applies to real life. Get ready to see every gesture, every look, and every choice of hers from a new perspective, and realize that even silence can have a devastating impact. If you are a fan of cinema, psychology, and want to understand the mind behind your favorite character, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any video. From what part of the world are you watching this video right now? Leave your answer in the comments. And appears in the story as someone who, at first glance, seems calm and observant, almost ethereal. But if you look closely, you notice that every gesture, every glance, carries an untold story. She is not just another survivor in the chaos of Alice in Borderland. She is someone who observes the world as if trying to decipher an ancient enigma. Have you ever felt that way? As if you were always one step ahead, but at the same time isolated? Anne conveys exactly that feeling. Anne's strength does not lie in muscles or speed, but in the strategic mind that seems to calculate every risk before it even exists. She enters the games like someone who has already known several internal defeats and therefore does not fear the external. This intriguing stance makes us question whether intelligence and sensitivity can coexist in someone who must fight to survive. Anne shows that they can, but in a way few would notice right away. From the beginning, the character reveals subtlety and silence as weapons. She speaks little, but when she does, each word carries weight, as if it held a truth many would ignore. It is at this point that her personality stands out, the ability to remain calm while the world around her collapses. And then comes the question that connects with anyone. Can you stay clear-minded even when everything falls apart around you? Anne makes us reflect on that with every move. Anne also has an aura of mystery that makes her unpredictable. Unlike characters who express everything with each gesture, she hides her cards, revealing only enough to manipulate the situation in her favor. It is fascinating to see how this ability to disguise thoughts is actually a layer of self-protection. Who has never needed to hide feelings or strategies to survive a delicate situation? And encapsulates that experience in an almost artistic way. Despite her calm and quick reasoning, there is something profoundly human in her that emerges at the right moments. She is not the typical heroine who faces everything with explosive bravery. She moves in a contained, almost silent way, yet with decisive impact. This creates immediate identification with the audience. How many times have we felt small before, enormous challenges, but still found unexpected strength within us? Anne represents this kind of silent courage. Another fascinating trait of Anne is her ability to read the people around her, anticipating movements, intentions, and even lies. It is almost as if she had a sixth emotional sense. But this ability does not come without cost. Constant vigilance demands mental and emotional energy, something any viewer who has felt overwhelmed instantly understands. Anne reminds us that being too alert to the world can be exhausting, even when necessary. Her delicate appearance contrasts with her mental and strategic strength, creating a duality that captivates. She is both vulnerable and invincible. Like someone who has learned that survival requires more than physical strength, it requires intelligence, patience, and sharp perception. Can you see this duality in real people who, even when they seem fragile, carry enormous internal battles? Anne makes us realize that appearance never tells the whole story. And finally, Anne's setup leaves us curious to explore her inner conflicts. Who is she really behind the mask of tranquility? What traumas and experiences shaped this strategic mind that does not waver in critical situations? What makes us hold our breath is realizing that behind each calculated gesture, There is an even greater story waiting to be discovered, and that is exactly where her internal conflict begins to unfold, paving the way for the next topic. Anne's life before entering the world of Alice in Borderland was already marked by loneliness and silent insecurities. She grew up surrounded by expectations that never seemed to fit her, as if she always had to prove herself. How many of us have felt that pressure to meet standards that were not made for our nature? This initial trauma shapes her ability to remain calm, observant, and strategic in the face of chaos. But it also leaves invisible scars. One of Anne's deepest traumas is the fear of rejection and abandonment. Every relationship she tried to build seemed fragile, held by invisible barriers, and that taught her to protect herself before anyone could hurt her, who has never felt isolated even when surrounded by people. Anne translates that pain through subtle gestures, silences, and calculated glances, showing how the experience of abandonment shapes future choices and behaviors. Beyond rejection, Anne carries a constant distrust of the world around her. This emotional barrier makes her perceptive but also lonely, like someone who needs to assess every move to survive. It is the kind of vigilance many who face inner trauma know well, always one step ahead, always calculating emotional risks. The tension between protection and connection defines her personality, making her both fascinating and complex. Another internal conflict is the struggle with her own identity. Anne often questions who she really is, separating the person others see from the one that truly exists inside. It is a silent yet constant battle that influences every decision she makes in the games. We have all felt divided between who we show and who we truly are, and it is at that point that Anne's psychology becomes so relatable. The weight of the past also affects how she deals with danger and pressure. Every decision in the games carries the memory of previous traumatic experiences, shaping her prudence and her almost superhuman calm. It is as if every past mistake had etched the exact map of survival into her mind, and that memory shapes not only her strategies but also her perception of the world. Anne also faces the conflict of empathy versus survival. She feels deeply for others, but knows that showing vulnerability in Alice in Borderland can be fatal. This inner conflict creates constant tension, the need to maintain humanity while fighting in an inhuman environment. How often do we ourselves feel that duality between feeling and protecting? Anne personifies that silent battle brilliantly. Insecurity and self-criticism permeate every step Anne takes. Despite her intelligence and adaptability, she constantly questions whether she is doing enough or will fail when most needed. It is a human reflection that resonates with anyone who has ever felt overwhelmed by external and internal expectations. This subtle vulnerability adds layers to her personality, making her both strong and human. All these conflicts intertwine, forming the foundation of who Anne is in the present, a calm and observant strategist carrying wounds that shape every gesture, every decision. What makes her story compelling is realizing that each action in the game is more than physical survival. It is a reflection of inner battles, old traumas, and painful lessons. And it is precisely this complexity that prepares us to understand how she turns trauma into strength, paving the way for the next topic. Anne's first visible trauma is the fear of rejection. It taught her to be cautious with those who approach, making her selective and observant. However, this defense also strengthened her ability to analyze situations and people quickly, turning vulnerability into strategy. Who has never had to build protection mechanisms to avoid getting hurt. Anne shows that these defenses can become survival skills, essential to navigate chaotic worlds. The abandonment Anne suffered shaped her self-sufficiency. She learned early that depending on others could bring pain, and so she developed an almost absolute independence. This trait makes her rely only on herself, but also resilient, able to make quick decisions under pressure. Many who have gone through loss or rejection identify with this need to rely mainly on oneself, a reflection of silent strength. The chronic distrust she carries influences every choice and evaluates risks and intentions like an emotional radar, avoiding surprises that could harm her. This trait, though exhausting, allows her to navigate the game with surgical precision. In the real world, this same ability translates into someone who perceives subtle signs and makes thoughtful decisions, showing that trauma can sharpen perception when well-directed. The constant struggle with her personal identity turns her decisions into deep reflections, and always wonders if she is being true to herself or merely playing roles imposed by fear or circumstance. This internal questioning keeps her alert and strategic, but also connects her to anyone who has ever felt divided between external expectations and inner desires. It is in that space that personality and choices intertwine. The weight of the past generates almost instinctive prudence. Every previous mistake shaped her current behavior, teaching her to calculate each risk before acting. This awareness becomes a silent guide, influencing decisions both in the game and in personal interactions. We all carry lessons from the past, but Anne exemplifies how to turn painful memories into tools to face future challenges. The conflict between empathy and survival shapes her morality. Anne feels for others, but understands that emotions can become vulnerabilities. This tension between heart and mind makes her act strategically, maintaining humanity without compromising her safety. How many times have we faced similar dilemmas in real life, trying to balance care with caution? Anne shows us that this balance is a complex and necessary skill. Constant self-criticism makes Anne question her choices even when they are correct. This trait keeps her attentive, avoiding serious mistakes, but also generates internal insecurity. In a world where every decision is vital, this mix of awareness and doubt shapes both her personality and her effectiveness. It is as if the weight of responsibility became fuel for strategy, something any mental survivor would recognize. Each of Anne's traumas, from fear to distrust, from self-sufficiency to calculated empathy, turns into strength and strategy. She becomes someone capable of complex decisions, predicting movements and understanding intentions with impressive clarity. This synthesis of wounds and skills makes her a multifaceted character and prepares us to explore how these choices manifest in the game's decisive moments, opening the way for the next topic. Each trauma Anne carries is directly reflected in her choices in the game. The fear of rejection makes her carefully assess whom to trust, avoiding impulsive alliances that could cost her dearly. This caution makes her strategic, someone who anticipates moves before they happen. Deep down, we have all felt the need to measure risks before giving ourselves to someone, and Anne shows us how this ability is vital in extreme situations. Her self-sufficiency turns into quick and independent decisions. She does not wait for help. She acts based on her own analysis, trusting her perception and judgment. This attitude inspires respect and admiration, but also highlights the loneliness that accompanies self-sufficiency, who has never had to act alone in critical moments, and embodies this silent strength, showing how trauma can generate strategic self-confidence. Constant distrust shapes her interactions and choices, making her observe subtle signs before acting. She perceives hidden intentions and avoids traps, creating a kind of emotional intelligence applied to survival. This trait allows her to manipulate the environment to her advantage, but demands continuous attention. It is an interesting lesson for any viewer. Paying attention to details can be the difference between success and failure. The struggle with her own identity influences her authenticity and flexibility, and adapts to the context without losing her essence, balancing survival and inner principles. Each decision reflects not only the need to survive, but also the attempt to remain faithful to who she is. It is a parallel anyone can understand. Balancing who we are with what we need to do is not always easy. The weight of the past generates almost instinctive prudence in her choices, and calculates risks, predicting possible consequences, which keeps her one step ahead of her opponents. This attention to detail, formed through painful experiences, becomes a powerful tool of strategy. We can all learn from this. Our mistakes can become silent maps for future decisions. The conflict between empathy and survival directs more human yet calculated actions. She manages to help and protect others without compromising her own safety, balancing emotion and reason. This ability is not innate. It is the result of traumas that taught her limits, priorities, and the importance of choosing carefully. Anne shows us that even in extreme worlds, it is possible to maintain humanity with intelligence. Constant self-criticism influences meticulous choices. Every move is deliberate, reflecting not only skill, but also awareness and responsibility. This blend of attention and doubt increases her effectiveness, making her unpredictable and strategic. Who has never reviewed important decisions before acting? Anne reminds us that doubt, when used wisely, can be a powerful ally. Finally, all these factors combine into a multifaceted personality. Anne is perceptive, strategic, empathetic, and resilient. Each trauma shaped not only how she reacts, but also how she thinks, plans, and survives. In the cruel universe of Alice in Borderland, this synthesis of wounds and strengths defines each of her choices, setting the stage for her final challenges and guiding us smoothly to the next chapter of her journey. One of Anne's most evident traumas is the sense of abandonment, and this manifests clearly when she hesitates before trusting other players. Every step she takes in the games reflects this caution, showing how the past shapes present reactions. Who has never felt afraid to open up after being disappointed? Anne demonstrates that these hesitations are not weaknesses but protective mechanisms that, curiously, become a strategic advantage. Another situation that reveals her trauma is the fear of failing under pressure. In the most intense challenges, she maintains apparent calm, but every move is meticulously calculated. This control arises from the need not to repeat past mistakes. It is fascinating to see how the pain of previous experiences can turn into almost surgical precision. Teaching that our wounds can be transformed into skills, Anne also shows in moments of isolation how distrust shapes her perception of the world. She carefully observes gestures, speech, and behavioral patterns of others before interacting. This constant vigilance is the result of old traumas, but it becomes an invaluable strength within the game. Who has never needed to read people to protect themselves, it is a reminder that attention and empathy can walk side by side. The struggle with her identity arises in situations where ethical decisions come into conflict with survival, and evaluates each scenario, questioning whether she is being true to herself or simply adapting to the hostile environment. This internal conflict, even if subtle, reveals how trauma can create a mind that is both strategic and reflective. How many times have we faced similar dilemmas in real life between what is right and what is necessary? Empathy, though repressed, appears in moments when she helps allies in danger, even when it could cost her points or advantage. This duality shows that, despite traumas that taught her self-protection, there is still room for humanity. Anne teaches that sensitivity is not an obstacle, but a strategic resource when used consciously. It is a delicate balance that few can master so well. Self-criticism becomes evident in every strategic choice. She reviews every step, assesses risks and consequences, often in silence. This continuous analysis stems from painful experiences, but also makes her almost infallible. How many times have we felt overwhelmed by reviewing our decisions repeatedly? Anne transforms this human tendency into a precise and calculated survival skill. In moments of confrontation, her fear of rejection and abandonment mixes with courage, creating unexpected actions. She manages to protect allies or face opponents in surprising ways, balancing instinct and strategy. This tension between trauma and action is what makes each of her decisions intriguing. It is as if pain itself were the fuel for movements that impress and surprise everyone around her. Finally, these combined situations reveal that each of Anne's traumas does not limit her but defines her. Fears, rejections, and internal conflicts transform into strength, shaping a multifaceted and strategic personality. Every gesture, every decision is a synthesis of her past experiences, ready to be explored in the next challenges. And it is precisely this intertwining of wounds and strengths that prepares us for the next topic of analysis. Anne's traumas are not just painful memories, they function as strategic guides in the game. The fear of rejection makes her assess alliances with precision, choosing trustworthy partners and avoiding unpleasant surprises. This caution turns negative experiences into a competitive advantage. It is like turning scars into survival maps, something anyone who has faced loss can understand. Her self-sufficiency manifests in quick and independent decisions. She acts without hesitation, trusting her analyses and perceptions. This attitude allows her to be agile in critical situations, seizing opportunities that others might miss. Anne shows that learning to rely on oneself is not just emotional resilience but also an essential skill for surviving in hostile environments. Constant distrust turns into strategic vigilance. Anne observes behaviors, gestures, and patterns, anticipating risks and manipulating situations in her favor. It is an example of how trauma can sharpen perception, transforming fear into a survival tool. In the real world, this same attention to detail can save us from problems that go unnoticed by most. The struggle with her identity influences ethical and strategic choices. Anne manages to adapt to circumstances without losing her essence, balancing necessity and inner values. This flexibility makes each decision more precise, showing that knowing oneself is as vital as analyzing the environment. It is a skill we can all wish for in moments of pressure, to act intelligently without losing authenticity. The weight of the past generates almost instinctive prudence. Every action is preceded by a calculation of consequences, preventing repeated mistakes. This detailed attention is a competitive advantage born directly from the experience of trauma, and teaches that our most painful lessons can become tools that allow us to anticipate problems and make more assertive decisions. The conflict between empathy and survival translates into careful strategies. She manages to support allies without compromising her safety, balancing emotion and rationality. This ability makes her actions unpredictable because she knows exactly when to act with heart or mind. In any competitive context, this mix of humanity and calculation is a powerful advantage. Continuous self-criticism influences her planning and execution. Anne mentally reviews every step, adjusts movements, and anticipates scenarios, making her strategies almost infallible. This tendency, which could be an emotional burden, becomes an engine of precision. It is a reminder that reviewing decisions and learning from mistakes is a way of turning vulnerability into an advantage. In summary, all of Anne's traumas are translated into survival skills and strategic intelligence. Every fear, every rejection, every doubt becomes a resource that guides her choices and maximizes her chances of success. In the merciless environment of Alice in Borderland, this synthesis between wounds and strengths allows Anne to navigate with precision, preparing the ground for the next chapter of her journey, how Anne's personality and strategies affect other characters and the unfolding of the story. Anne's strategic presence directly influences other players even without her needing to dominate the space. Her caution and silent analysis make allies feel safer, but also more dependent on her perception. It is curious how someone who appears calm can shape the behavior of an entire group, showing that leadership is not always made of words or grand gestures. Her distrust and ability to read intentions affect both enemies and allies. By perceiving behavior patterns, Anne anticipates movements, avoiding traps and guiding collective decisions without the need for explicit command. This silent influence transforms the group's dynamics, showing that trauma and strategy can generate respect and dependence even in hostile contexts. Anne's calculated empathy also impacts close relationships. She helps at the right moment, balancing care and safety, creating bonds of trust that prove essential for survival. This combination of protection and perception makes those close to her adapt to her presence. Learning to value emotional intelligence as much as brute strength, her prudence and self-sufficiency inspire others to think before acting, raising the group's level of planning. Even without being central, Anne establishes behavior patterns that influence collective decisions and strategies. It is fascinating to see how internal traumas turned into skills can shape an entire group's dynamic in high-pressure environments. The internal conflict between empathy and survival also serves as an example for other characters, showing that it is possible to balance sensitivity with rationality. Those around her learn that acting with humanity does not mean weakness, but can become a strategic resource, and thus becomes not only a player, but a moral and practical reference. Anne's constant self-criticism and detailed planning make every collective step safer. Her silent influence causes allies to review decisions, avoiding serious mistakes and increasing the group's efficiency. This ability to shape others' actions without pressure demonstrates that well-directed trauma generates significant impact, creating silent leaders who transform hostile environments into spaces of strategy. Even adversaries are affected by Anne's presence. Her unpredictability and sharp perception force enemies to recalculate moves, demonstrating that a strategic personality is a factor that transcends alliances. This raises the narrative tension and makes every interaction more meaningful, proving that internal traumas can generate powerful external influence. Finally, Anne's personality and strategies not only ensure her survival, but also shape the story's progression. She is a point of reference for allies and an obstacle for enemies, showing that traumas, when transformed into skills, can alter destinies and decisions. This influence sets the stage for crucial moments, making it clear that each of her actions carries weight in the narrative and the upcoming challenges. At the end of this phase of analysis, we realize that Anne is not just a player in the chaotic world of Alice in Borderland. Every gesture, every decision carries the weight of old traumas transformed into survival strategies. It is fascinating how painful experiences can become strength, shaping a multifaceted personality that defies expectations and captivates the audience. Her story leaves a natural suspense. How far will Anne be able to take her abilities before emotions or traumas catch her off guard? This uncertainty keeps the viewer attentive, creating tension and curiosity about the next challenges she will face. It is like watching someone balancing on a tightrope, and every step requires focus. The way she influences allies and enemies makes it clear that her impact goes beyond individual survival. Every action reverberates, shaping decisions and strategies of everyone around, increasing the plot's complexity. Anne becomes an invisible central point whose silent choices have visible and decisive consequences. The duality between empathy and survival, self-criticism and calculated action creates a unique dynamic that keeps the audience emotionally connected. We want to understand not only what she does, but why she does it, and that keeps us hooked on the narrative. It is in this space between action and motivation that psychological analysis becomes so engaging. Each revealed trauma, each applied strategy adds a layer of suspense. Will her emotional intelligence be enough in the final challenges? This implicit question serves as a powerful hook for the continuation of the analysis, maintaining the viewer's attention and curiosity. Anne leaves us on the edge of every crucial decision. The audience also connects when seeing traumas transformed into tangible skills. It is an invitation to reflect: how do our own experiences shape our decisions and behaviors? Anne functions as a psychological mirror, showing that internal wounds can become instruments of strength, strategy, and resilience. And as the game intensifies, we realize that her story still holds revelations. With every calculated move, new internal and external conflicts emerge, showing that Anne's journey is far from over. It is precisely this sense of continuity that keeps the viewer engaged and eager for the next chapter. So, what did you think of Anne's analysis? Did you notice how traumas and silent choices shape not only her survival, but also the influence she exerts on everyone around her? Now, I want to know from you, which character from Alice in Borderland do you want me to analyze in the next video? If you identified with how Anne turns vulnerability into strategy, imagine how much we can learn from other stories as well. So don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss any psychological analysis that will show you sides you never imagined of the characters you love. Each video is a new opportunity to better understand the human mind, and I want you with me on this journey.